Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. In case this is your first video that you're checking out today, I apologize for the sounds that you are hearing in the background. There is a massive amount of construction, literally, for like 2 weeks, from like 9 to 5. That jackhammer thing that is just pounding the ground all day long. They're demolishing like piece by piece this old parking garage, and it's killing me. So I lose my space, or I get like it's all that fault. I hate it just as much as you guys, but they're not here to talk about construction. We're here to talk about movies, and I've seen a bunch just because of the way my schedule is. I was off yesterday and today. Yesterday I had to do a little catch-up stuff. Today, trying to get some more things handled and finished, here. But in the interim, it was like work, movie, film something, work, So I've seen a lot, and we got a lot to catch up on. This first movie is one that came to HBO Max as a day-and-date release for Warner Brothers. Stars Hugh Jackman in a post-apocalyptic sci-fi thriller. And this movie's a bit of a mixed bag. There are some things that definitely work here, but I think some of the overarching storyline decisions kind of hinder this movie a little bit, as does some weak dialogue. What am I talking about? Why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat. We're getting ready to dive in spoiler-free into Reminiscence. And for those that are unfamiliar, Reminiscence, as I said, is set in a post-apocalyptic world where the apocalypse was a flood. And most of the world has become flooded. We are set in Miami, where you can see most of the city is underwater, and the water comes up to halfway into the buildings and whatnot. And because of this, they don't ever actually say what causes the apocalypse, but based on just reading between the lines, it is too hot during the daytime. I've been to Miami. Those people are used to heat, so if it's too hot for people in Miami to be outside, my thought is that it must be related probably to global warming. Maybe the polar ice caps melted. That's what's created this flooding. Whatever. Because of this, though, this event has happened, and it makes it hard for people to look to the future, because most people are kind of stuck in this lower kind of end plate. You're stuck living in the areas that are wet. Whereas the rich people are set up in the dry land areas. One of the things that I think worked in this movie, but we'll come back to that. Nevertheless, the thing that people look to is, if you can't look to the future, you look to the past. So you come to Nick Bannister's establishment, which is, he's played by Hugh Jackman, along with his partner, Thandiwe Newton's character. They run a memory shop, where basically you come in, you hop into a tank, and they're able to have you relive memories. And the whole concept of that type of technology stemmed from interrogations and crimes, where you're able to interrogate somebody by going through their memories. And Hugh Jackman kind of has to, it's like a guided meditation to a degree, where he kind of has to talk you through it. And if you do something wrong, you could lose the person who, their brain could start firing in places that they shouldn't be firing, looking for memories that don't exist, that could then create a vegetative type state. That's the world that we're in. And our creator here is one of our two co-creators of Westworld, Lisa Joy, who is married to Chris Nolan's brother, Jonathan Nolan, who is a producer on this film, but writing and directing everything is Lisa Joy. And as I said, the movie is a bit of a mixed bag, and I think that Lisa Joy does some things well and other things not so well. In the not-so-well department, I don't think the dialogue is very strong. Even though you have a really, really strong, talented cast, there are moments where it's just the dialogue is just silly, and they can't even save it. And certain elements of the movie are just kind of silly because of the apocalyptic event you decide to pick. While visually, the flooding concept is stunning to look at, from a story standpoint, just creates a lot of plot holes. I mean, how do people have power? That in and of itself is kind of how do people have power if everything is flooded? If half the city is underwater, then the stuff that was creating all the electricity would be underwater, and it wouldn't work. So how does that function? It's one of those movies where there are just things, and they are there because they were put there, and there's really no work put into it. And the idea of this flood, part of the city is not underwater, it's just wet on the ground, but I guess they've built dams or things like that. There's just the whole flood thing just didn't really jive, especially with the fact that, you're creating this sci-fi noir thriller. Noirs typically are set in really dimly lit, dark atmospheres, and this whole concept of like it's too hot during the day, so society has become nocturnal. Okay, that plays into a noir because you're going to be at night. However, if you're doing any kind of investigating, you're usually doing that when people aren't up and about. So like good chunks of this movie take place during the daytime, which kind of takes you out of the noir feel. And let me tell you, like when Joy is locked in, like the noir stuff really works, specifically for me in the first act. The noir stuff was so good, like the lighting, the just setup, because everything early on is pretty much happening, at night. Like all of that stuff hit. The score, a lot of hi-hats, like mixed with the voiceover coming from Hugh Jackman, like it really looked and felt like a noir. And then all of a sudden, like it's like the movie didn't want to continue to play in that realm. So like you end up in a lot of daytime sequences, and the same with the score. You start to go more toward a sci-fi type of feel, but you lose the noir feel. And just wonky things like that from a technical standpoint would take me out of the movie every once in a while. But Lisa Joy also does some pretty good things. Like if you just, negate or don't think about the fact that like, okay, you have a giant flood, like there's beautiful imagery. Like we have trains that kind of rip through some of the water to go from like Miami to New Orleans because everything else is flooded. But like at the same time, like who the hell built that train and how did you build that train? The idea of the rich people being on the dry land and everybody else is in the wetlands. How were you able to segment yourself off and get away from people? Like if there are more people living in the water that don't like the landlords, who would build all the stuff that protect, like there's just elements of the movie that like based on the setting we're in just don't make sense. However, from a visual standpoint, like that train going through the water and across from like Miami to New Orleans, stunning. The landscape establishing shots that we see of the city where like the water is just like hitting the buildings and stuff, gorgeous. And like even when you're up high, you can see like people have to maneuver around the city through using boats. Beautiful like rooftop sequences, where like Rebecca Ferguson's character, like her bed, and she's got like a bed and stuff set up on her rooftop. She likes to go out there like in the early parts of the day, see the sunrise, like gorgeous stuff. But again, there are moments like that where you're like, isn't this supposed to be like a post-apocalyptic world? Like, that looks like a better setup than what I've got going in a non-apocalyptic world. Like, that stuff just didn't mesh for me. So, ultimately, that's the stuff that really makes the movie not work. But it's technically really, really well shot. Whether you're just staging one of these memory sequences, inside of the office. If you're out and there's action going on, there are 2 action sequences in this movie that are actually quite good. There's kind of a shoot 'em up scene at a bar, and there's like a rooftop fight sequence that's hand to hand with Hugh. And in both, like they're both very well choreographed, very well executed from a fundamental standpoint, to the point where it's like I went and saw Snake Eyes, which is supposed to be this martial arts action movie, and just because of the way they shot the action and cut around the action, you felt like you missed most of the action. And this movie just has 2 action sequences in an action movie, both drastically better than what we got in Snake Eyes. And I think the thing that really kind of like can lock you into what I look for in action is I don't mind camera cutting as long as I don't feel like I'm missing the action. If the camera cuts to go in closer, you do it to elevate the action, that's what I look for. Snake Eyes didn't do any of that. This movie, every single piece of action does that. Like there is this gorgeous tracking sequence with Hugh Jackman and the guy that he's fighting, and they're going through a room this way, and the camera just simply follows them, and it's in a wide shot, so you can see all the choreography. You can tell like Hugh Jackman is doing most of the work, and they do cut away. They go to different shots, and then they'll come back, and the camera is just continuing to move. But like everything they did from an action standpoint hit big time for me. And while I think the story, overall kind of has its struggles and the dialogue isn't great, I really was invested in these characters, or at least in Hugh Jackman and Thandiwe Newton's characters. They're business partners, and both Nick Bannister and Watts are people who are easy to root for, easy to like. You like that relationship. However, this is one of those movies where like they even make a mild spoiler. They make like a comment at one point where like you don't see the thing that's right in front of you. Like that's the relationship that should be working in this movie, and just the fact that like Bannister never acknowledges that or like moves to that, like that was kind of wonky. However, the performances that you get from Jackman and Newton, even if their story is kind of wonky, make you invested in the characters because they're really, really good performers. I'm honestly not too sure why Thandie Newton wasn't the lead here. Being a Westworld alum, like you'd think you'd want that person to be a lead, and maybe it's because she got probably more screen time as Watts than as May. But like, it just seemed like an odd choice, especially because the chemistry between Bannister and Watts is so good. Like Jackman and Newton are just very fun to watch play off each other. And because of those performances, you really get locked in specifically to the Nick Bannister character. And that's the thing that works for me in this. Like, while you're getting these really good performances, I am solidly invested in what's going on with Nick Bannister, from, his pain and his joy and like just the things that he's trying to figure out and like piece together. Like this mystery around the May character was stuff that really worked for me, and it created emotional beats and tie-ins to the Nick Bannister character that they're able to set up and establish that really hit home. And for me, like where things hit and don't hit, like the first act of this movie I think is really solid. That's what gets you emotionally attached to Bannister and Watts. Middle of the movie, little murky, little wonky sometimes, but then the third act, I give the movie credit because for me the third act clicked, where all the emotional payoffs at the end of the movie, they hit right where you want them to. So I loved everything that Jackman was giving you. Loved what Thandie Newton was giving you. Rebecca Ferguson, I love her. She's very talented. I think she does a fine job here. I don't know if this was necessarily the entirely right role for her. Like the character, I just don't think is written very strongly, even though the mystery around the character I thought was written quite strong. But Ferguson certainly brings a lot more to May than what she is given, and the way that she can walk that tightrope, right, of like good and bad, it keeps you guessing, it keeps you off balance, and like that stuff, despite the material not being super strong, was fun to watch Rebecca Ferguson elevate. You also have Cliff Curtis in here. I won't say much about his character, but he is tied into, May and Nick's story and where he plays into the movie and the interactions that he has with people. I really, really enjoyed him. Daniel Wu plays this kind of gangster named St. Joe. He's in that shoot-'em-up action sequence. It's pretty much the only scene that he's in, but certainly nails that stuff. As you would expect him to. And anybody else that kind of pops up in here, they do nice things. Like you see Angela Sarafian, who is another Westworld alum. She is a critical character, while minimal screen time. Like her storyline is very integral to the overall plot and things that are going on. And, they didn't give her a ton, but it was like you watching like, oh man, like that's one of my Westworld friends. Like, I love seeing her pop up in things. And you get that with a few people throughout the movie, but overall, like I said, the thing that ends up making this movie a win for me is the fact that the emotional stuff connects. And, like, you get to the third act, and you get to the reveals, and you finally find out what all the answers to the mystery are. I was sobbing like a baby. And it's not because it's super, super well written, but it is unbelievably well acted. And the sequence that hits the emotional beat, they prime you for that sequence, like, early in the movie, and then when they execute it, is one of my favorite sequences of the entire year. Like, I just sat here and I'm watching as everything is unfolding and Hugh Jackman is putting the pieces together. The choices they made and how to tell that part of the story and how to wrap this thing up, it was so moving, it was so emotional, and it was so beautiful. And those are the moments in the movie that really hit for me. And if the movie could have done that throughout and could have really, stayed locked into that noir and maybe had a different sci-fi apocalypse that made it feel more like a post-apocalyptic world, I think this movie could have really, really been something special. But because of the choices that it ends up ultimately making that are kind of like the big decisions, I think this one kind of misses the mark a little bit, and you kind of waste some good performances and some really excellent moments in a movie that just becomes okay. So that's it, man. That's all I gotta say from a non-spoiler side, which means it is time for a score. So let's get the C-Maniacs up. There they are. Like I said, I think Lisa Joy does an okay job here with the script. I don't think the script is super strong, specifically in the dialogue section, and some of the choices she makes in world building here just end up undercutting her and create issues that didn't have to be there. However, from the directing standpoint, like, man, does this movie look fantastic. She knows how to stage an action sequence. She knows how to just stage all the different things that you're doing, and knows how to keep a mystery interesting. Like, I mean, that's something that we know Westworld can do, right? Like, that's something Westworld does so well, and one of the things that Joy does is it keeps you guessing all the way up until the end, and that allows the emotional beats to connect because of the really good performances that you get from folks like, Hugh Jackman, Thandiwe Newton, or Rebecca Ferguson. But, even with, like, the good action and the emotional beats hitting, like, the movie just wanes back and forth, between what it really wants to be. And when it's really locked into the noir stuff, excellent, especially on the score side. But when it starts to move away from that noir stuff and go just flat sci-fi, and it doesn't bring any of those noir elements over, the score kind of loses me a little bit. So that's an overall mixed bag, but because the ending clicked and it connected with me emotionally and gave me one of the most stellar sequences I've seen in a movie this year, I am going to go 2.6 out of 5 C-Maniacs. Just over the halfway point, because I think this movie deserves to land on the good side. I think there's more good in here than bad, even though the bad really does kind of pull the movie down a bit. So there you go, man. Those are all my non-spoiler thoughts on Reminiscence. Now it is your turn. I want you to hit those comments. Let me know what you're thinking, man. This is on HBO Max, so did you watch this? Did you go to the movies and see it, or did you watch it on your couch? What did you think of the movie? Did you think the noir stuff worked? Did you think the overall kind of storytelling choices that they make worked for this post-apocalyptic world? Which performances popped or didn't pop for you? What was something striking visually? Like, there's so many good visuals in this movie. Like, I just want to know everything that was working, not working, and ultimately where you landed on the movie. Put all of that, good, bad, and indifferent, down below in the comments section. Look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the C-Man anytime. We're talking movies, TV, trailer, reactions. You dig what I'm doing? You want to show a little love, support? Well, hey, come join C-Maniac Nation. Real easy. All you got to do is jump over there. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that little bell if you want those alerts. And until next time, for the C-Man's Cinema Sit Down, I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace. Oh, hey, what's going on? You must be sticking around because you're looking for more content featuring this guy. Well, guess what? You're in the right place. You can check out more videos right here and right here. And if you have and you want to come join that C-Maniac Nation, you can hit that subscribe right over there.